Welcome to Black Swan Revelations. My name is Shane, and today we're going to be talking about the encampment of Israel. If you find this interesting, feel free to subscribe to this channel. Feel free to leave a comment and let me know what you think of this video. And feel free to share it with someone else. Maybe you learned something in this video. Maybe you'll learn something. So we're going to talk about the layout of the camp of the Israelites. And we're also going to be talking about their journey, as in how they were actually marching as they journeyed through the wilderness. And we're going to go into a little bit of detail, but what I find easier to do sometimes is to write this stuff out and draw a bit of a diagram so that you can have a better understanding of what's going on. And maybe this will make it easier for you the next time you decide to read Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. So basically, we're going to skip a little bit around in Numbers because the book of Numbers is about the same, especially at the very beginning, it's about the same time frame as when Moses was given the Ten Commandments, and then he started giving a template for the tabernacle. So this is basically the same time frame. I don't know when he had time to write the book of Numbers and Leviticus and Genesis, but I guess you can write a lot when you're in the desert for 40 years. Anyways, okay, so let's just jump into this. Basically, at the beginning of Numbers, there was a census done because the idea was Israel was to invade Canaan, take over the place because the sin of the Amorites was basically full, and now God was using Israel to judge that nation. And the idea behind it was he was going to send hornets ahead of them to basically slowly push the inhabitants of Canaan out, and then they would start taking over all the homes and everything like that. So that's kind of interesting. But things changed when the spies came back with a bad report and they said, there's giants, they're going to eat our children, so let's go back to Egypt. That caused quite the problem. Israel ended up wandering in the wilderness for about 40 years. So let's just jump into this. Let's just dive in. So I think the easiest thing is to start drawing out a little bit of the layout of the camps. I think this is probably the most important thing to try and do. So let's just do that. I'm going to draw a little bit here. I'm going to use my whiteboard. So let's just see here. Let's see if we can do this. All right, we're going to use the pencil. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the tabernacle here. Oh, this pencil needs to be a little bit thicker. Let's make the line thicker here. There we go. So we got the tabernacle here. And then we have, and you've probably seen this before. Basically, I'm just going to use the letters with a little box to describe each one of the tribes. So this is the tribe of Judah. This is the tribe of Issachar. And I'll explain why I'm putting it like this. Issachar, and then we have the tribe of Zebulun. And then over in the north, we have three tribes as well. We have Naphtali, and then we also have the tribe of Asher, and then we have the tribe of Dan. Then over here, we have, uh, we have Benjamin, Tribe of Benjamin. And again, most of you have probably seen this. We have Manasseh, and then we have Ephraim. So far, so good. So, and then the direction, of course, is west, and this direction is east, and up here is north, and down here is south, of course. And then over here, we have three tribes. We have Gad. Then we also have Simeon. And we have Reuben right here. So basically, four camps. So you have the camp of Ephraim, you have the camp of Dan. Guess I can actually put an arrow. So basically, the western camp is called Ephraim, the southern camp is called Reuben, and the northern camp is called Dan, and then the eastern camp is called Judah. So whenever the Israelites were talking about certain areas, like the camp of Judah, it usually involved Judah, Issachar, Zebulun. If they're saying the camp of Dan, they're talking about Dan, Asher, Naphtali. If they're talking about the camp of Ephraim, they're talking about Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin. And then, of course, the camp of Reuben would be Reuben, Simeon, and Gad. So as they're having a conversation, they might say something like, hey, we need some more food, whatever it is. Oh, just go to the camp of Reuben. There's more bread over there, or whatever. That just makes it easy for Moses to be able to communicate with the various camps, because each one of these tribes is actually the leader of that particular camp. So there's four camps. What we also have is we have to deal with the descendants of Levi. So we have the Kohathites. So basically, we have three camps for them as well. So we have Gershon right here. I'll spell it out here. I just want to make sure I have enough room. So maybe I'll just write it here. Gershon. Gershon. All right. And this will make sense once I'm done. So you have the camp of Gershon, which is basically going to be in this area here. They're basically camping out west of the tabernacle. And then you have the Merari. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but basically this is a brother of the Gershons. Basically, the Gershonites right here is their camp. They basically are here, and that is, I'll try and spell it. MER, what is it? MERARI. So however you pronounce that, Merari. That's the brother of Gershon. And then basically you have Kohath, which is the son. So these are the three sons of the Levites. So you have Kohathites, which are down here. Basically this camp. They're south of the tabernacle, and we'll call them the Kohathites. Kohath. Kohathites. Kohathites is what they're called. All right. So you basically have, again, three brothers, three sons of Levi. You have Gershon, you have Kohath, and you have Merari. Right? That's important, because we're going to talk about the layout once they start marching. So the Gershonites, basically, these guys, I drew this box a little bit big, but basically they had two wagons that were donated by the princes of the Israelites. So they have two wagons. And I know this is going to get crowded real fast. So two wagons. And these guys, the Merarites, they have four wagons. Again, donated by the princes of Israel. And there was 12 princes, one for each tribe. Basically, the guys that were in charge of each tribe. So the two wagons here are for the Gershonites to basically load up. Their responsibility was basically the tabernacle tent, which included the covering, the hangings of the door. That was their responsibility. That's what they would end up folding up and putting into the wagons. So they would have two wagons and they would have four people driving the wagons. So these wagons actually had um, four oxen. So two oxen per wagon. And then you would also have two princes per wagon. So you have two representatives on each wagon. Whenever they would journey through the wilderness, their job was to make sure that the tents and everything is secure in their wagon. So that's their responsibility. So they would have four princes within the Gershonite camp that actually drove the wagons. With the Merarites, they had four wagons. Why? Because they handled the heavier stuff from the tabernacle. They handled the boards. Excuse me. They handled the boards, the bars, pillars, the sockets, the vessels, and any of the pillars that were on the corners of the tabernacle, um, all the pins. So basically, they just loaded up these four wagons with all that stuff, all the heavy bars, the wood, all that kind of stuff that they had to carry. I think most people perhaps didn't think about this when they're breaking camp and they're leaving. I think most people just kind of assume that everybody just carries something. But I didn't realize this until I read this a few times that they actually use wagons to actually help them transport the tabernacle, which makes sense because when you think about it, you got a lot of gold overlaying some of these vessels. Some of these vessels are pure gold and all that. That's going to involve a lot of heavy lifting. And the first time I saw wagons was basically when Joseph, when he was in Egypt, sent a bunch of wagons to go and help Jacob, his father, and bring all 70 people to Egypt. That's the first time I actually paid attention to wagons. Never noticed that before. All right, so then we have the Kohathites, which basically are right here on the southern side, and their responsibility is the ark, carrying the ark, carrying the table, carrying the candlestick, carrying the altars, carrying the vessels, and some of the hangings as well. So this is quite the privilege to be able to carry the ark. So their job was to actually carry. So if you want to know who's carrying the ark, it's the Kohathites. It's the relatives or the descendants of Levi, if you will. They're carrying all these vessels. And then on the east side, right here, we have Moses and Aaron and Miriam and Aaron's four sons. And we quickly realized that two sons actually died because they basically light up some fireworks and they weren't supposed to with a couple of their sensors, if you will. All right, so that's that camp, and that camp is on the east side. So we got Moses, and basically the priests, if you will, Aaron and his sons, is how that camp is set up. All right. So the reason why I set it up this way is because this seemed to make the most sense to me when they're breaking camp, because there's a specific order whenever the Israelites would break camp and they would have to march. So the first tribe to lead the way, of course, is the tribe of Judah. They're the ones that are to lead. And then next to them would be Issachar. And then next to them would be Zebulun. That's the order. But what some people miss is, where do the wagons fit in? When do they come in? Well, let me see if I can clear this in one foul swoop. Can I clear this? Let's see here. Erase. Can I erase all this? Oh yeah, that's not too bad. Okay. So hopefully, I know it's a little bit all over the place, but I know there are people that say it looks like a cross and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, you can definitely map out the different tribes in the shape of the cross. What I presented to you was actually the positioning of each one of the tribes, and I put it in the order that I showed you because it seems to make the most sense logically. And I kind of wish I didn't erase all that because I was going to show you something else. That's okay. That's okay. Um, I wish I had a real whiteboard that I could write on instead of using this, but that's okay for now. So when they actually took off to start marching through the wilderness, like I mentioned, Judah's first. You basically have the other two tribes behind him because this is the camp of Judah. So you have Issachar, and then you have Zebulun. Then next to them is basically you have the wagons, the 6 wagons are next. And I want to be able to fit this all in here. So I'm going to draw these really small. So picture 12 oxen pulling these 6 wagons. So 2 oxen per wagon and 2 princes per wagon. Then next would be Reuben, because remember I had Reuben on the right side, on the south side. So if you think about it, if their camp is down here, some people put the Reubenites on the left, like they're reading left to right, but in Hebrew, you read right to left. So I put the Reubenites, the Simeonites, and then the Gadites in this order. So the reason why I did that is because when they start taking off, don't forget they're actually taking down the tabernacle. So once these 3 tribes begin to march, that's the cue for the people in charge of this wagon that Moses and his sons are going to start dismantling the tabernacle. And no one is allowed to touch any of the vessels, the ark, nothing like that until Moses, Aaron, and his sons are done wrapping everything up. And they have a certain order that they did it, but we're basically skipping ahead all of that to the point where everything is being loaded into the wagons. And now the next in line to follow after the wagons would be Reuben, and then Simeon, and then Gad. So those are the 3 that follow next. And I'm just going to erase this real quick here. And I'm going to put them in the line. All right, so then you have the next 3, which I mentioned already, which is Reuben, and then Simeon, and then Gad. So that's why I put them in that order, because it tells us the order. So if you were to put Reuben on the left side of the southern camp, they're going to have to go past all the soldiers. Excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. Can I get by? Because I really got to catch up to these wagons. It doesn't make sense. The more logical way of doing it is to have the order: Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and then they mention, I think it's the Marishites and then the Kohathites, basically, they're all loading up the wagons. Then we see the tribe of Reuben, Simeon, and Gad. And then after that, we see the rest of the Kohathites, basically with these two wagons. Not the wagons. They're actually just carrying the ark. They're carrying the tabernacle, the altars, all this kind of stuff. So that's these guys here. They have the ark. So you can basically go like this if you wanted to, if this makes it easier for people to understand. This is the ark. And then perhaps on either side, they have more vessels that they're carrying, whether it's on knapsacks, backpacks, whatever it is, but they're carrying like the candlestick and all this kind of stuff. And they have to carry all this stuff by hand, basically, whether it's in bags, whatever, but they don't get the wagons. Korah and company do not get wagons. It's the other guys that have the responsibility of carrying all the heavy stuff, like I mentioned, the bars, the pins, the pillars, all this kind of stuff. So right now, you basically have the ark almost dead center. When you think about it, you got three tribes here. You have more of the tabernacle furnishings. Then you have the next three tribes, and then you have the ark. And after the ark, you have the tribe of Ephraim. That's why I put Ephraim the closest to the ark on the west side of the camp. There, the camp is basically the camp of Ephraim because they have to follow close behind the ark. And then we have the other half tribe, which is Manasseh. And then we have the other tribe, the youngest son, which is Benjamin. And I find it kind of interesting that this whole camp is basically the sons of Rachel, which is kind of interesting. Rachel's sons. So you got Benjamin and you got Joseph's sons, obviously, because they Joseph's tribe actually was made into two half tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. But that's on the west side, which is kind of interesting when you think about it. And then we have Dan following close behind Benjamin. And then Asher. And then last but not least is Naphtali. Naphtali, Asher, and then what did I say? Dan. These are on the northern camp. So again, this is the camp of Dan. This is the camp of Ephraim. This is the camp of Reuben. This is the camp of Judah, and they probably have their own flags, if you will. So it's very easy to spot them. Okay, the camp of Judah is moving out. Let's get ready. Let's take apart the tabernacle. And then the Reubenites would move out. The camp Reuben would move out. So these three tribes would go in order. And then the ark would go next with all the furnishings, the candlestick, like I mentioned. What else goes with the ark? The table, the altars, the vessels of the sanctuary, and some of the hangings as well. And then you have the next six tribes bringing up the rear, if you will, the rear guard. So this is how they would march throughout the wilderness for 40 years. So that's basically the order. And I think this will help when you start looking at the camp. And when they say they're breaking camp, there's order to it, which is what I like. I like that there's order. Now I know this looks messy, but I like the idea of figuring out how they march and all this kind of stuff. Let me just see if I can close this here, come back to me. So again, later in Numbers 16, we actually see Korah and the tribe of Reuben, some of the sons of Reuben, actually form a coalition. There's about 250 of them that actually come against Moses and Aaron. And what's interesting is if you rewind the video, you'll actually notice that the tribe of Reuben is in close proximity to the Kohathites, which is where Korah would have camped out. Korah would have been part of the camp of the Reubenites. So basically, they were close by because the Reubenites had to guard the Kohathites. And inside the Kohathite camp is Korah. So there's probably some communication going on, like who made Moses prince, which gives you a little bit of a snapshot going all the way back to when Moses was in Egypt. And remember in one of my previous videos where I said Moses looked this way and that way to make sure that no one was watching, and he actually killed an Egyptian because an Egyptian was beating on a Hebrew. Then the next day, Moses approached two Hebrews that were fighting, and Moses stopped the one that was in the wrong and said, "Hey, what are you doing? Why are you guys fighting with each other?" And the one prince said to Moses, "Who are you? Why, who do you think you are? Why do you think you're a judge or a prince over us?" And Moses realized, because the guy said, "Are you here to kill me like you did the Egyptian yesterday?" So Moses realized that this guy is ratting him out basically. And he actually went to Pharaoh shortly thereafter, ratted on Moses, and Moses knew that this thing was basically that he was found out. So that's what made him leave and go to Midian and meet Jethro, his future father-in-law. Ended up marrying Zipporah, but that's why he fled. But one of the guys, I believe his name is Dathan, and later this is one of the guys that actually helped Korah form a rebellion, because the same thing was said, "Who made you prince?" Echoing what was said 40 years earlier. So some of these guys remember Moses and they still don't like him because they think he's raised Egyptian. And they even accused him. They said, "Oh, I see what you're doing. You actually brought us out of Egypt because there was not enough graves in Egypt. This is why you're killing us out here. We actually had it better in Egypt before you came along." So it's interesting that they're accusing Moses of dragging them out into the middle of nowhere to kill them because there's not enough graves in Egypt. So Moses probably paid attention to that as well and went, "Okay, I remember this guy. This guy gave me trouble the first time around." So then we realized thereafter, I think there was about 3,000 people actually died that day. Actually, 250 there. 3,000 people died when they actually built the golden calf, thanks to Aaron. And I like Aaron's story. All I did was I got everybody's earrings, all their jewelry, and I threw it into a fire, and out came this calf. It wasn't my fault. Anyways, the point is, it's interesting once you know where people are camping that you could start piecing things together and go, "Oh, okay, it makes sense that Korah was in this camp close to Reuben, because if he was living in another camp, perhaps they wouldn't had the same rebellion with the Reubenites. It might have been another tribe." It's just kind of interesting. I know that's a lot of stuff, right? But if you do a deep dive on the family tree of the Levites, like I did here, basically, again, this is all that. And what I drew for you guys here is also on this here. I don't know if you could see that. It's kind of a nicer layout than my chicken scratch. And then, of course, when they're marching out, and there's where I found that from number 7. And then as they begin their journey from Mount Sinai, it's in Numbers 10. So you can see how that was all laid out nicely. And when I'm talking about Kohathites here, this is where you think about it right here. This is where Korah would be living, would be camping out, because he's responsible for carrying the ark. And then over here, if I can go down, is the Reubenites, which were causing part of the rebellion. All right, that's lots, isn't it? I know I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to this kind of stuff, but it's fun. It actually helps me when I go through the Bible to just see how things are laid out. I like stuff like that. So I'm actually going through Leviticus now, and I might do a little bit of a deep dive into Leviticus maybe next week. We'll see. But I want to get through Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And Deuteronomy is a fantastic book as well. It's basically a summary. Moses is basically on his last days, and he's basically summarizing all their events, everything that has led up unto that day, including future, all the way into the latter days, what happens to Israel when they get scattered. Lots of stuff, right? Lots of stuff. Anyways, I hope you got something out of this. I hope this sparks a little bit of curiosity in you that you would actually consider spending a little bit more time in the Bible. I love reading the Bible. I just think the more you dive in, the more you get something out of it. And I feel like really in the last 2 years, I've only scratched the surface because I began my journey reading the Bible really 2 years ago. And I've read the Bible 12 times in the last 2 years. And I feel like I'm literally just scratching the surface, just starting to remember where things are in the Bible. So I'm not very good at memorizing. I'm really not. What my secret weapon is I just plow through the Bible. I just read it over and over again, and then things begin to stick. So there you go. So again, hopefully you got something out of this. Feel free to subscribe to my channel. Feel free to leave a comment, give me a thumbs up, share this video, whatever uh, tickles your fancy. And I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.